last 12 months since White Ribbon Day of 2014, we've seen a bit of a shift at the centre from not just talking the oath, but about living the oath. And I guess what does that mean in everyday terms, and to live the oath means what to everyone. I think for me, upon reflection, what I've noticed in the last 12 months since we had the last White Ribbon Day campaign was a greater focus and emphasis, particularly when working with men, around identifying and naming when violence occurs.
Prior to making the oath, I thought that just not being violent myself was enough. And I think since making the oath, I've reflected a lot on what it does mean to me, and really about my part in speaking out against violence, in challenging sometimes some of the attitudes, values or controlling behaviours that I've seen around me and the people I know or the people I come in contact with.
Living with the oath. The values and principles of the oath is something that I've always lived with. Living with the oath is not difficult. It's something that I always do. I've always been a strong advocate for the protection of women. I often ask junior members, what if that was their mother, daughter, sister, wife or girlfriend? Would they have done anything different? What else could they have done? And also letting them know that they have the power to actually make a difference to someone's life.
I think when you consider the oath, what it's asking you to do is to actually stand up and speak out and do something, to act, to do something to stop violence immediately, but also to add to the greater campaign to eliminate violence entirely. Well, it sounds difficult, but you can either choose to be a bystander and allow it to happen, or you can choose to intervene and do something to actually change what is now a human rights violation, and something that is preventable. That's important, that violence against women is ultimately preventable.
Raising greater awareness as a community would be really valuable, and certainly those are the conversations I've been having with lots of guys. When they think of violence, what do they think of? We hear a lot on the news about family violence. What do they think about when they hear that? And really starting to challenge some of those values and the attitudes. I've been thinking about how do you have a discussion or a dialogue with other men in a way that keeps that conversation open and says, well, what do you value? You say you respect women. How does what you do, how do those sort of comments or those jokes align with that?
And giving it a form and a shape, not allowing it to be a vague concept that men talk about, but actually identifying it and saying, well, that's violence against women. And that's really been quite a challenge for a lot of men to hear and to have it named in that way.
Most men only think about violence as physical violence, and that we probably do need some sort of an awareness campaign to help people recognise that it's physical violence is at one extreme, but there's a whole lot of controlling behaviours, emotional abuse, stopping people seeing particular friends, stopping women have control of finance, keeping track of where women are, that many people do in their relationships unconsciously, and they don't see that as violence.
The more you talk about it, the more you contemplate it, the more you speak to other like people about what it is to not support violence, particularly gender-based violence, it does become a little easier to talk about.
And I believe that there is actually a cultural change that is trending and supporting the protection of women. As men, it's important that we support one another and drive a culture of change against violence against women.
It's important for people to understand that when White Ribbon Day comes around on the 25th of November, that's the start of the 16 days of activism for the elimination of violence against women. Also, that International Women's Day in March is a good time to actually talk about this. And White Ribbon also have a mid-year campaign, which is spend the night in to get the word out.
So I think it's been a productive 12 months, but it's just simply the start. And it's consistent with what we talk about here at the Centre, which is now moving to that, how do I live the oath every day? So identifying that it's not just one day a year, being White Ribbon Day, but it's 365 days a year.
For someone who comes to the campaign who knows nothing about the campaign, I think the oath is a really good starting point for them. The more you know about this, the more you want to talk about it, and the more you can actually have some proactive change.
We are moving towards a stronger and safer and more accepting society towards the protection of women. What we do have to do is keep fighting the good fight. This is something that doesn't come easy. It's something that we as men, as a community and as a society, that we must continually strive to push and support women and make sure and ensure their protection.